Are you still excited by this? Because that means you didn't see the last movie.
I mean, that's fair. I know Phantom Menace had its haters, but regardless, I still think people were pretty dang excited to see this. This entire trilogy is telling the story of Darth Vader's origin, and this film in particular sets up the Clone Wars. I think fans are pumped to see that at least.
Opening text crawl continues to bore and delight everyone.
Sending the opening crawl. That's worth a few extra.
More talk about the Senate. The next thing you know, this franchise is going to turn into The Manchurian Candidate, which is a great movie when it's not called Star Wars.
I'm not going to make the same mistake this time, Matidia Loran. It makes sense to show the politics in these movies. Real life wars have happened because of political disagreements. Heck, A New Hope briefly mentioned the Galactic Senate and that it was disbanded by the time that film took place, so of course we'd see it in these prequels.
The third paragraph of this crawl is about the exciting action of voting.
And that voting is about the creation of the clone army that starts the Clone Wars. Come on, Jeremy, isn't that a little exciting? It sets up the best Star Wars TV show ever.
Discount CGI Cloud City.
If there weren't buildings clearly visible through those clouds, this joke would land a lot harder.
Senator Amidala, please.
How does one go from queen to senator? Do you have to renounce your bloodline's claim to the throne? Is senator actually a higher office than queen to this society? I'm so confused.
Yes, senator is an upgrade from queen. This time, Padme gets to represent the entire planet of Naboo while she's in the Senate and can help make drastic changes to it if she needs to. And this is good character development for her too, since in the last movie, the Senate was basically useless to save Naboo from the Trade Federation. Now, Padme can prevent stuff like that from happening again.
We're keepers of the peace, not soldiers.
Did the Jedi luck out with sporadic uprisings until this moment in time? How do they keep the peace with so few of them if there aren't enough to go to war? That's like having a National Guard based in Nebraska with 15 people in it who can go to Florida if need be, but are powerless if anything happens later in Texas.
Not exactly. The Jedi have been maintaining peace in the galaxy for 1,000 years, and large-scale wars haven't happened during that time as far as we know. They don't need to enlarge their numbers since they didn't expect war to happen anytime soon.
The dark side clouds everything.
Let's just go ahead and say it, Yoda is useless as a prophet. Also, how does Palpatine have such amazing control of the dark side of the Force that none of these Jedi can sense it 3 feet away?
That's exactly the point the movie is making. Palpatine is that strong with the Force to cloud the Jedi's vision to the point where they can't see him as a Sith. This also feeds into the Jedi's arrogance that Yoda later talks about. They are too overconfident, and this is why they were ultimately wiped out.
Impossible to see. The future is.
And yet future prophecy bullshit will drive everything we do from here on.
This dialogue comes after Palpatine asks Yoda if this conflict will lead to war, and Yoda responds by saying he doesn't know. The prophecy was most likely made way before this event, so that's why they still trust it.
Desktop hologram.
Pointing things out on the screen.
Count Dooku was once a Jedi. He couldn't assassinate anyone. It's not in his character.
Did these assholes never once run into a Jedi who went to the dark side? Why does everyone fret about training someone like Anakin if that's the case? Sure, Darth Maul said something about revealing ourselves to the Jedi, but I thought he was implying they'd been gone a long time, not that they never existed.
The point is that Dooku doesn't seem like the kind of guy to turn to the dark side. He was Qui-Gon's master and a highly respected Jedi master within the Order. The idea that he could become a Sith is something the Jedi find unlikely.
He's just returned from a border dispute on Ancion.
He and Anakin were able to take care of that border dispute all by themselves. Not only amazing, but not filmed to show us how that works.
Probably because it's not important to this film's story. Dude, this movie is already 2.5 hours long. Are you really asking for the runtime to be padded?
I haven't felt you this tense since we fell into that nest of gundarks.
That sounds exciting. Let's watch that instead of this.
It does sound cool, I'll give you that. But do you really think that's better than seeing the beginning of the Clone Wars?
Annie? My goodness, you've grown. Annie, you'll always be that little boy I knew on Tatooine.
So let's have kids together.
Like I said in the last video, Padme is only 5 years older than Anakin. Right now she is 24 while Anakin is 19. You want to hear an even worse pairing? Han is 13 years older than Leia. I'm not kidding, look it up.
She covered the cameras. I don't think she liked me watching her.
Yeah, would anybody? Especially someone who basically led dick first during the introductions a minute ago?
Jeremy says boner.
You're using her as bait.
Why not use another decoy? Why not dress and drag in her bedroom while she sleeps on a nondescript floor of this building?
How about you let the scene play? Anakin says in this scene that this was Padme's idea, and Obi-Wan flat out admits that this plan was too risky.
Besides, your senses aren't that attuned to my young apprentice.
And yours are.
Just how much back talk has Obi-Wan put up with from this little throughout the years? Because I'm betting it's way too much.
And that's a sin because...
You've made a commitment to the Jedi Order, a commitment not easily broken.
And which doesn't allow for the power of boners.
Jeremy says boner again.
If they know the exact floor and exact room Padme is sleeping in, why didn't they just program this thing to fire missiles into the room? Yeah, the assassins felt like they needed to be more subtle, but do you think people wouldn't be able to figure out this was foul play?
It doesn't look like to me that this droid can hold a blaster, but you said it yourself. They need to be more subtle.
Now here's something extremely weird. Obi-Wan jumps and crashes through the window like a dick, through blinds and what is probably some tough-ass glass, even if it has a small hole in it. It's amazing it doesn't fall to his death right here. This is something unbecoming of his character, and something Anakin might more likely do since he's a hormone-based horn dog of a Jedi right now.
Actually, this is something Obi-Wan would do. In fact, this shows his greatest flaw. Hypocrisy. He criticizes Anakin for doing arrogant stuff, but he himself does it too. He also said they aren't supposed to investigate Padme's killer, but here he is doing that.
Whoa, wait, what's that? Is that my falling master in the middle of all this craziness? Ex Machina to the rescue!
Yeah, that's not a Deus Ex Machina, my guy. That implies Anakin being here comes out of nowhere, but it was set up when we earlier saw him find this exact speeder and go out to find Obi-Wan after he jumped out and grabbed the probe droid.
Geez, how do they survive this? The answer is just because.
Probably because it's not actually deadly.
I hate it when he does that.
You did the exact same thing a minute ago! Do you remember crashing through the glass after a fucking flying probe?
Exactly what I was just saying a couple sins ago. Obi-Wan is a massive hypocrite and he doesn't realize it.
Here's the problem. If you're going to explain he survives these things and somehow knows where Zam's ship is just because of the Force, you're gonna have to do a better job of relaying that message. This is some serious bullshit right here.
Okay, I agree with this sin. Even I think the Force excuse is a bit of a stretch, and just the fact that Anakin and Obi-Wan seemingly lost the assassin, and then Anakin just jumps off the speeder and happens to find her is a bit clunky. My problem with this sin, though, is Jeremy saying the movie should have done a better job relaying the message that this was the Force's doing. How could it have done that? What's your suggestion?
Anakin doesn't pull out his lightsaber and infiltrate or crash this speeder instantly.
Because he doesn't want to fall off?
Once Anakin does use his lightsaber, he's terrifically bad at killing speeder pilots with it.
He's not trying to kill her. He wants to find out who she's working for. He's just trying to destroy the controls so he can capture her.
Also, I thought Anakin wanted to see where the ship went, where the assassin went, and who she's working for. Instead, he just went right back to let's kill this asshole and doesn't seem the least bit concerned about the other knowledge.
And now you're lying right now. The assassin pulled her blaster out, and Anakin tried moving it out of the way so she wouldn't shoot him, and the blaster accidentally shot the controls inside the speeder. This is back when blasters were actually lethal.
You want to go home and rethink your life?
I want to go home and rethink my life.
This is the only time Jedi mind tricks ever work. Once with a stormtrooper in the first movie, and with this drug dealer in the fifth movie.
Not true. Luke also used it successfully on Bib Fortuna in the third movie.
You will take me to Jabba now. It'll talk about Jabba now.
And Qui-Gon also used it on Boss Nass in the fourth movie.
And speeder's on our way.
We are gonna speed you away.
We could use a transporter.
We shall give you on the bongo.
Not to mention the mind trick only works on the weak-minded. As I said in the last video, if it worked on every living being, then the story of Star Wars wouldn't have happened. This is why Lucas put that limitation on it, so the story could take place with no issues.
Also, during this entire chase, no one is standing at the door to make sure the assassin doesn't walk out. Obi-Wan is drinking, definitely something a fucking Jedi does when hunting somebody down.
This is meant to show how clever Obi-Wan is. He knows the assassin might try to kill him or Anakin, and so is drinking and waiting for her to reveal herself. I agree that it's odd that she doesn't run out, but this is why Obi-Wan is drinking.
Oh, now I know why Obi-Wan is drinking, so that there's a callback to the original Star Wars in the Mos Eisley Cantina, and so George Lucas can find an excuse to cut off another limb.
Yeah, these are lightsabers. Do you know how powerful they are? It makes sense we see them cut so many limbs off in this franchise. This is back when lightsabers actually felt dangerous and you couldn't just survive getting stabbed.
Tell us now!
They don't even try to Jedi mind trick Zam. They just go the old-fashioned Batman and or Jack Bauer route.
Because she's not weak-minded? I feel like even Jedi could sense that and realize the mind trick would be pointless.
It was a bounty hunter called.
There's no chance in hell Jango knew where anyone was and what time they'd be here. Just go right to hell with that.
Why not? You don't think Jango probably had a tracker on her or something? Just the fact that he's willing to kill her so easily makes me think he had this as a backup plan.
What about Senator Amidala? She will still need protecting.
Handle that. Your Padawan will.
I sensed he cared deeply about his mother and didn't want to train him because of that earlier. But now I can't sense this horny teenager's desire and will make him the primary guard for Amidala.
Because he was already guarding her? And also, this movie has made it painfully clear that the dark side of the Force has clouded the Jedi's mind, so that's why they can't sense Anakin's feelings for Padme.
The boy has exceptional skills.
But he still has much to learn, Master.
Somehow, between the last movie and this one, Obi-Wan and the Jedi Council have completely reversed their roles on the idea of Anakin as a Jedi.
They have not. They always knew that training Anakin wasn't a great idea, but they allowed Obi-Wan to do it because it was Qui-Gon's dying wish. And you played Mace Windu saying Anakin has exceptional skill, which lines up with the last movie when they admitted he was extremely strong with the Force.
Too sure of themselves they are.
Maybe it's that constant fear leads to the dark side tripe you've been preaching this whole time that makes them more confident than they should be.
Or maybe it's the fact that before Darth Maul they hadn't seen a Sith in 1,000 years, and please don't bring up the Acolyte.
The prophecy is true. Your apprentice is the only one who can bring the Force back into balance.
Yeah, about this prophecy. Is there some sort of turmoil going on where the Jedi need the Force to come back into balance? If so, what does Anakin need to do to bring about that balance? Exist? There's absolutely no explanation for this, and it feels like it was put in the script just to sound good.
There is unbalance in the Force because now there are 2 Sith running around, which will mess up the galaxy. To restore that balance, the Chosen One must destroy all Sith, which is exactly what he does at the end of the original trilogy. At least before Disney retconned that.
Funny how after Amidala had the run-in with the autonomous probe the previous night, she's allowed to walk around unobstructed windows to her heart's delight.
He says, as if there's not a Jedi literally right there to protect her.
He's overly critical. He never listens.
Where the f*** did this come from? You were just talking about making sure she's safe, and it turned into a diatribe about how life's unfair to you.
How about you actually listen to the dialogue and you'll see where this came from.
I haven't worked for a year to defeat the Military Creation Act, to not be here when its fate is decided.
Sometimes we must let go of our pride and do what is requested of us.
Anakin, you've grown up.
Master Obi-Wan manages not to see it. Don't get me wrong. Obi-Wan is a great mentor. As wise as Master Yoda and as powerful as Master Windu. I am truly thankful to be his apprentice. In some ways. A lot of ways. I'm really ahead of him. I'm ready for the trials. But he feels that I'm too unpredictable. He won't let me move on.
That must be frustrating.
It's worse. He's overly critical. He never listens. He doesn't understand. It's not fair. It's not fair.
Padme will not only ignore this childishness, but go on to enter a sexual relationship with this whiny baby.
Well, that's because she's a kind and sympathetic person. She understands exactly what Anakin is going through, and she can probably even help with that.
Please don't look at me like that.
Why not?
Because it feels like you want to f*** me with your lightsaber, you creepy bastard.
That's the 3rd Jeremy Says Boner sin in this video. Good lord, Jeremy.
Sorry, milady.
Well, that is f***ing evil and creepy, and now I need a shower.
Nah, it's not as creepy as when you said this in the Inside Out video.
Well, I'm definitely on some kind of watch list now. Thanks, Pixar. Rose Byrne and Natalie Portman are not my sister wives in this scene.
Coming after my Atlantis video where you tried to virtue signal, this is pretty dang funny.
Don't do anything without first consulting either myself or the council.
Especially f***ing this queen, you hear?
Whatever, funny joke, but she's a senator, not a queen.
The official subtitles here say that R2-D2 gave that cook robot raspberries. What the f***?
You mean blowing raspberries. Have you seriously never heard of that before?
Or be with the people that I love.
You do not love her yet. You haven't even seen her in 10 years. You have a boner. That's it. How does Jedi training not include sex ed?
He's loved her since the last movie, dude. Do you not remember when you criticized that movie for beginning the most awkward love story? And he also said boner again.
Attachment is forbidden.
So do all the Jedi just hope that all potential Jedi in the universe are created by that Shmi Skywalker method of midichlorian pregnancy?
No, lots of kids just happen to be born with the Force. Jedi then take the kids when they're very young and raise them in the Jedi Temple. And no, they don't kidnap them. They ask permission from the kids' parents.
I'll tell you how this romance is made even more painful. It has to start with Amidala resisting Anakin for nearly the whole movie before they can start lying around in flowers and shit.
You literally played a clip of Anakin saying attachments are forbidden. Padme heard that, so doesn't want to mess with Anakin's loyalty to the Jedi. And a Jedi and a senator falling in love is just something that doesn't happen anyway.
Because someone erased it from the archive memory.
Oh, come on. So let me get this straight. Just on the off chance someone was looking for this planet for whatever reason, someone decided to erase it from the archives. And why would anyone be looking for this planet? Except when someone finds a rare poison dart that only the chef at a diner could recognize.
How is this a real question? Wouldn't Dooku want this clone army kept a secret for 10 years until they need it? They would have never approved it before then, so if they found out, they would have shut it down.
Also, they removed the planet, but they didn't remove anything else that might help someone locate it? That gives you, like, the opposite effect of what you're trying to accomplish, right? You might as well put a neon sign there that said planet removed for incriminating purposes.
Well, yeah, they still want the Jedi to eventually find out about the clones if they want to begin the Clone Wars.
Apparently R2 navigates stairs one by one, very slowly, but can catch up to them no problem even though they never stop.
And doesn't this answer your question on how R2 got onto that landing platform in the last movie?
I heard they even tried to amend the Constitution so you could stay in office.
She was a queen, though, right? Not an elected official. Or does this planet just elect people and call them queens?
Yes?
The day we stop believing democracy can work is the day we lose it.
Let's pray that day never comes.
You have a queen in this world, right? Isn't that a monarchy? Or are you like the British monarchy where you have a queen but she has no power?
How does that have anything to do with the Galactic Republic? The Queen literally can't do anything there. That's what Padme is there for, and why her becoming a senator made perfect sense.
There it is, R4.
Yep, the planet we've probably seen for many, many parsecs because it is a huge celestial body in space. I am just now acknowledging that I see it.
Many, many parsecs? Dude, they just arrived here.
You will be delighted to hear that we are on schedule.
All these people need to know is that Obi-Wan is a Jedi, and they just blab the whole evil plan to him before making sure it's okay to tell him.
That's because the order to create the clone army came from a Jedi Master, specifically Sifo Dyas. Heck, they thought he was still alive even though he died 10 years ago. Why are you so bad at paying attention?
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Never a more eloquent word was spoken in order to woo a fine woman.
Oh, come on.
Here everything is soft and smooth.
This line works. Also, didn't you fools just get here? Rapid romance is fucking rapid.
Why are you saying this as if this romance happened during that small amount of time? Didn't you literally acknowledge it was being built up as they were on their way to Naboo?
We take great pride in our combat education and training programs.
But we don't spend much time on aiming practice.
Great. You're one of those people that think clones are stormtroopers. I think if there was any piece of evidence to show that this man doesn't know crap about Star Wars, it's this.
Movie unintentionally inspires Twilight.
Jeremy just compared this romance to Twilight, and I'm offended by that. Enough to pad the sin count even further.
Movie misses its chance to insert the lightsaber swooshing noise in this scene.
Jeremy says boner again.
No one apparently told Jango that a Jedi was coming, because he left his incriminating in the closet completely out in the open for anyone to see.
Who would have told him? The Kaminoans? They don't know that he's involved in the plot to kill Padme.
They'll do their job well.
A whole army of Jango Fetts, and somehow the bad guys are going to lose this thing.
What? Did you not watch Revenge of the Sith? This army of Jango Fetts literally turned on the Jedi and wiped most of them out. So technically the bad guys won this thing.
Did the Council ever authorize the creation of a clone army?
Palpatine came into power about 10 years ago. The Jedi who supposedly ordered a clone army died about 10 years ago. And there's only one guy who has the kind of power to do all this. So, who could it be?
I'm not sure what Palpatine being made Chancellor has to do with this. And are you saying they should have thought it was him? They don't know he's a Sith. And why would they just assume that the Sith created an army for them? They don't know that this army will eventually turn on them. I also think you might be referring to Dooku, since we know that he hired Jango to create the army. But again, I don't know why the Jedi would go, remember that Jedi that was once with us? He made an army for us so we can defeat him. Anyway, you look at this sin, it's stupid.
Blind we are. If creation of this clone army we could not see.
But instead of explaining how that's possible, we dedicated many minutes to Amidala and Anakin not having sex.
You're seriously asking for an explanation for how the Sith could cloud the Jedi's vision? It's the Force, just go with it. 10 more sins for splitting this video into 2 parts. Also, unlike in episodes 1 and 3 where the timer keeps going into part 2, in this one the timer just starts over. Dang it, I wanted to see how long you spent on this film.
Dad! No!
Whoa, what the hell is going on? How did we get here?
I'm pretty sure you know. Didn't you watch the earlier scene where Yoda told Obi-Wan to capture Jango so they can question him?
Obi-Wan fistfights with this dude instead of force choking him or force pushing him or any of the other non-hand-to-hand force attacks.
Did you just suggest a Jedi use force choking?
Do you know where they are now?
It's amazing, even with all the Jedi training and peacekeeping he's done over 10 years, there wasn't one time he was allowed to fly over to Tatooine and visit his mom.
Yes, attachments are forbidden, and Anakin going back to see her would have definitely been an issue. Plus, he hoped that when his training was complete, they could go back to Tatooine and free her.
He must have put a homing device on our hull.
They do realize they're being tracked, but only after they arrive at their destination. Inconvenient.
Because they saw Obi-Wan behind them? This is decades before he could track ships through light speed, so Jango just made a correct assumption that he's a tracking device on the Slave One. Yes, I'm still calling it that.
This is a clear case where the challenge is way too high for anyone to survive it. And therefore, you just sit in the theater wondering why Obi-Wan isn't dead.
Not removing a sin for one of the most satisfying sound effects in cinema history.
Tell me, why is it in Star Wars when the bad guys' ships fire at the good guys' ships, the lasers go all around the ship instead of at least one blast hitting it?
Lying again? These blasts do hit the ship.
We got him!
I just noticed something. There's really no reason R2 couldn't have come on this mission. All he's doing right now is following Padme and Anakin around. I'm pretty sure R4 is the red R2 you look for in toy stores at this point.
Obi-Wan doesn't care for R2 or see him as that valuable. At this point, he belongs to Padme, while Obi-Wan owns R4.
I am C-3PO.
So Watto sold Shmi to some other person, and she decided to take the incomplete C-3PO with her, and someone decided to finish the job?
Yeah, that's most likely what happened. I don't see any problem with that logic.
Owen Lars, this is my girlfriend, Beru.
Let me get this straight. The powers that be decided that Luke would someday come to live here, even though Anakin met Owen and Beru? You didn't think that would be a huge risk? What if Vader decided to come back to the old homestead for whatever reason?
But Vader hates Sam. Okay, all jokes aside, why would Vader just randomly decide to visit his stepbrother? He was serving the Empire. That doesn't seem like something he'd just do during his free time. Not to mention his planet already has a lot of bad memories for him that he wants to avoid, such as his mom dying.
Not that I'm complaining, but Padme decided to wear the super hot ab-bearing outfit to go meet Annie's mom.
Sinning something you like.
The editing is confusing. We were logically following Anakin as he seeks bloody revenge against the Tusken Raiders who killed his mom. And this scene makes us think we're still following him, but no, we're suddenly on an entirely different planet following Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Tatooine doesn't have this kind of structure though. We've seen practically the entire planet by now.
Count Dooku walks right past a Jedi here and does not sense him.
Actually, it is likely Dooku does sense him, but he's not doing anything about it because he's in on Palpatine's plan. They want Obi-Wan to overhear their plan so he can then report it to the Republic. They'll approve the Clone Army, and then the Clone Wars can begin.
Stay with me, Mom.
In the grand tradition of all dying Star Wars characters, Shmi held on long enough for one final meeting before passing away. Also, Anakin watches his mother die because something dark side motivation something.
The first sin was understandable, but what even was your point in the second one? How's Anakin's mom dying to motivate him a sin of this film?
This movie doesn't earn the dark side transformation of Anakin. He was a whiny kid for most of this movie, and now he massacres a bunch of Tuskens. Had someone been here to stop him, and that need for revenge festered in his heart, the next time would be a good time for a massacre. Most of everything we know about Anakin was talked about, not shown, and this comes off as rushed.
He doesn't turn to the dark side in this movie. More importantly, though, if you were paying attention, you would have noticed that attachment is Anakin's greatest character flaw. Yoda warned him about that in the last movie, and now we're seeing what he means by that. If someone kills a loved one, he will not hesitate to get revenge, which isn't the Jedi way. This sets up the next film where he's too afraid to let Padme die and kills younglings.
Why'd she have to die?
She probably didn't, but you left her alone here as a slave on this planet to pursue your own Jedi goals. What did you think was going to happen to her? Happily ever after?
Again, he hoped to come back and free her. That was the main reason why he left in the first place.
I will be the most powerful Jedi ever.
This is pretty much par for the course as to why we hated this performance. We kind of want Anakin to start being a colder person, definitely a lot less whiny at this point, more Darth Vader-y. Instead, our brains keep referring to their shut up section.
Didn't you just criticize him killing the Sand People as being rushed? Now you're suggesting he should act colder about it? He hasn't reached that point yet. We get that in the next film.
And not just the men, but the women and the children too.
Anakin can somehow tell Tusken women and children from the men. I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
Probably because he spent his first 9 years on this planet, has most likely seen them a lot before.
Hologram action sequence.
What is your beef with holograms, man?
Why the f*** is C-3PO suddenly on this mission?
C-3PO is Anakin's droid. After he just lost his mother, it makes sense Lars' family would want to give him back. Maybe even as thanks for bringing her back.
If only Senator Amidala were here.
Entire sequence of events leads to Jar Jar making an important decision in the Senate to give Palpatine more power. Also, was this part of Palpatine's plan? Did he know that Padme would appoint the dumbest character alive to be her replacement when hit the fan?
Yes, Padme trusts Jar Jar, especially after they worked together to stop the Trade Federation 10 years ago.
The dark side of the Force has clouded their vision, my friend.
Again, how? Perfect time to explain this bullshit, and immediately goes on to the next subject.
And again, how would that have been explained? And are you seriously saying Dooku should just tell Obi-Wan that? Don't you always criticize villains for monologuing?
I'm so confused.
Maybe that explains why you aren't funny anymore.
Suggesting 3PO isn't funny anymore.
Movie is an asshole. That is the very definition of cheating in filmmaking, you f***er. This is equivalent to telling your mother you have terminal cancer, and then when she starts sobbing, you trash talk about how you pranked her and how stupid she is.
That's a bit of a drastic comparison.
Give me a break. Why would there be anything like this sitting around in this random part of the factory? And once again, R2 compatible.
Probably because the Separatists have their own astromech droids.
I thought that we had decided not to fall in love.
You see why the romance should have taken off a lot sooner? There's basically 40 minutes left in this movie and they're still trying to resolve this.
Except this is the scene where they resolve that. Need I remind you that they get married after this?
Our heroes luck out and are taken to an arena to be executed, instead of simply getting killed on the spot.
This is a Geonosian custom, and the Separatists have to appease them if they want to build their droid army here.
Movie unintentionally inspires John Carter.
But didn't Star Wars famously take a lot of influence from John Carter of Mars? So technically, it's the other way around.
This creature basically didn't want to kill Amidala, just make her sexier. Nobody seems particularly concerned that one of the prisoners is free.
Probably because these creatures are here to kill them anyway.
Hey George, while we're here, humanizing Boba Fett was one of the stupidest ideas you had in these prequels, and that's saying something.
I wouldn't say this movie humanized Boba Fett. If anything, his own Disney Plus show did that, and that was one of the biggest issues of that show.
Aren't these animals weak-minded enough so they can Jedi mind trick them? Or is that just a human-to-human interaction?
Isn't it obvious that Anakin is doing that? At least I thought it was.
Ow, my vagina!
Okay, I'm not sure why that made me laugh, but it did.
Star Wars finally gives us a nerdgasm scene with dozens of Jedi and lightsabers all at once, and I'd take a sin or two off if I hadn't had to sit through 2 movies of mostly boring bullshit to finally get this. Since you enjoyed this in Phantom Menace so much, Lucas ups the ante with even more Jedi versus copious amounts of CGI droid.
These 2 sins are back to back. Like, does Jeremy like this scene or not?
Django Unchained.
Arbitrary movie reference.
I'm quite beside myself.
I hate you and I wish you would die.
Hating on C-3PO.
The Death Star is apparently fully operational in like 20 years. They must have had 1 million contractors working 24/7 on that thing.
Considering the Republic became the Empire, they likely had all the resources they needed for that.
You're gonna pay for all the Jedi that you killed today, Dooku.
Saying things.
Isn't that exactly what you do whenever you send movies?
Electricity, curiously a trait only dark side Force users have.
Besides the fact that the word side implies that they would have powers that the other doesn't lightning just feel like a dark side power to you? It would be pretty jarring if a Jedi ever used it, which I guess is why it was when Rey zapped that spaceship, but at least that movie explained Palpatine was her grandfather.
What a f***ing surprise. Is that the 50th limb cut off in this franchise?
It does make sense for Anakin though, considering Obi-Wan described him as more machine than man in the original trilogy.
He could finish them both off right now, or at least Obi-Wan if he knows where Anakin is headed, but decides, nah.
I doubt he knows Anakin's fate, but I'm pretty sure he would have killed him if Yoda wasn't there. You could also argue this is a hint that he regrets this, knowing he used to be a Jedi.
Yoda finally pulls out a lightsaber. He finally fights. It took 10 hours of Star Wars to finally see this, and I'm torn because he's a bastard CGI creation now.
Sinning something you like.
Why does this guy need a cane again?
Because it's meant to underestimate how powerful he is. He does need it because of how old he is, but he can still use the Force to empower him to jump around like this.
Here was a glorious chance to see 3 Jedi all combining their Force power together and stopping this ship from flying. Or, as we said before, why can't Yoda just stop this ship himself if size doesn't matter? This thing is smaller than Luke's ship in the swamp.
Not sure if Anakin and Obi-Wan could have helped, considering they were cut by lightsabers. And Yoda just lifted this giant column, which took energy out of him. There's no way he'd have enough energy to then stop Dooku from leaving. Force lifting is similar to weightlifting, where it requires a lot of energy to pull off.
Let's talk about Palpatine's plan. It required Amidala to be taken off the planet so she couldn't vote on the Military Creation Act. Then she had to make Jar Jar Binks her replacement, who was then passively bullied to request a vote granting unlimited power to Palpatine. Then the Jedi have to stumble on a poison dart that was only used because another assassin failed, a dart that only a diner owner could verify. Then Palpatine removed the planet from the archives, which required even more sleuth work.
Palpatine didn't erase Kamino from the archives, Dooku did. Yoda flat out said that only a Jedi could have done it.
Then, when Obi-Wan went to the Cloner planet, the people there showed him the entire plot no questions asked, which led him to Jango.
Again, that's because Jedi Master Sifo Dyas did it, and the Kaminoans assumed it was approved by the Jedi Council.
Jango had to curiously leave for another planet where the droids were being manufactured so that Obi-Wan could relay that message back to the Republic, and only then could they get the ball rolling. Without all that, what did he plan to do?
To start the Clone Wars and use that to overthrow the Jedi? That's literally how he won in the end.
Lost
integrity, CinemaSins.
has. How embarrassing. How embarrassing.